Okay, so what if I told you that for a little while, the birthplace of American democracy was actually home to a giant mastodon skeleton? Yeah, for real. Today, we're going to dive into the surprising and kind of weird hidden history of one of America's most iconic buildings, Independence Hall. You've definitely seen this building before. I mean, it's everywhere, on money, in photos, in movies. But its story is so much more complex and, frankly, more interesting than you probably think. This isn't just about bricks and mortar. This place, it's the physical embodiment of a revolutionary idea. So, let's peel back the layers, shall we? So how did a pretty standard Pennsylvania government building end up becoming this global icon of liberty? Well, that's where our story really begins. Looking at these two images side by side pretty much tells the whole story, right? On one side, you've got the original Pennsylvania State House. Back in 1753, when it was finished, people were already calling it the greatest ornament in the town. And on the other side, the landmark we all recognize today. Its journey from a local capital to a world symbol is exactly what we're here to unpack. I want you to just think about that phrase for a second. Outstanding universal significance. That's how UNESCO describes it. That means this isn't just an American thing. No, it's recognized all over the world because the ideas that were hammered out right here, the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, they sent ripples across the entire planet, inspiring people for generations. But here's the wild part. The building we know almost didn't happen. Back in the 1730s, there was this huge fight. One guy, John Kearsley, wanted to build it on High Street, but Andrew Hamilton, he fought tooth and nail for the Chestnut Street spot. The whole thing got so nasty it had to be settled by a vote in the provincial assembly. Just think about that. A single vote decided the fate of a future world icon. Now, the building itself is amazing, but its real importance, its true power, comes from what happened inside. Specifically, within the four walls of just one room. This is it, the assembly room. This is the heart of Independence Hall. We usually picture revolutions happening on battlefields with cannons and smoke. But this room? This was the intellectual front line. This was the battlefield of ideas, where a nation was literally argued into existence. This timeline just puts the sheer weight of this room into perspective. It's unreal. In 1775, they create an army from scratch. Okay, just 1 year later, they define what that army is even fighting for. And then, as if that's not enough, they come back in 1787 to design a completely new form of government. 3 decisions that changed the world, all made right here. Can you even imagine the vibe in that room during the summer of 1787? The pressure on those guys drafting the Constitution was immense. So to make sure they could argue freely without any outside pressure, they swore an oath of secrecy and nailed the windows shut in the middle of a Philly summer. It was a literal pressure cooker, both physically and politically, as they hammered out the future of a nation. This is such a powerful comparison. On the one hand, you have the quiet, preserved room as it looks today. And on the other, an artist's vision of that electric moment the Declaration was adopted. It's like you can almost feel the history, hear the echoes of their debates. It connects our time directly to theirs. Okay, so you'd think after the revolution, story's over, right? Well, not even close. After the capital moved away, the hall's story took a really, really unexpected turn. Say this building didn't just have one life. It had at least 4. It was a state house, then a museum, then a city building, and finally the landmark we know now. But that second phase, the museum part, that's where the story gets really bizarre. Yep, you heard that right. For more than 20 years, the second floor of Independence Hall wasn't filled with politicians. It was filled with taxidermied animals and fossils. An artist and scientist named Charles Wilson Peale ran his museum there, and the star attraction was a massive, fully assembled mastodon skeleton. I mean, talk about a shocking second act for the birthplace of a nation. And the building itself was always changing. The original steeple rotted and was taken down. The side wings? Demolished and replaced. Then a totally new, fancier steeple was added. And then, get this, those new wings were torn down again almost 100 years later and rebuilt to look like the originals. It makes you think, right? The building we see today is this amazing, painstaking reconstruction. It's a monument not just to that one moment in time, but to centuries of people trying to preserve that moment. And that effort to preserve it is still going on, which brings us to today and the incredible scientific work it takes to protect this icon from all the threats of the modern world. Trying to keep a building this old safe in the middle of a huge city is a constant battle. I'm talking millions of footsteps wearing down the floors, air pollution and acid rain eating away at the brick, and the constant, relentless enemy of every old building, water. So the National Park Service has to fight back with a really cool mix of science and history. They use high-tech tools to analyze everything, and they've developed these methods for reversible repairs, basically fixes that can be undone later so they don't permanently change the original structure. It's all about protecting the building without accidentally erasing its history. So let's zoom in on a specific example. Between 2010 and 2012, the tower was in trouble. Water was getting in, wood was rotting, iron was rusting. It was bad. The solution was like delicate surgery. They had to thread new steel supports inside the old timber frame, replace only the bits of wood that were absolutely beyond saving, and restore original pieces. The goal is always to reinforce, not replace. So finally, let's talk about the hall's legacy. Because it's anything but a dusty old relic. It's a living symbol that people are constantly using and reinterpreting in new ways. And you really can't talk about Independence Hall without mentioning its super famous partner in crime, the Liberty Bell. It used to hang way up in the hall's steeple. Even though they're in different buildings now, their stories are forever tied together. They're like the twin symbols of American liberty. And you know, this symbol is probably a lot closer than you think. It might actually be in your wallet right now. Independence Hall has been on the back of the $100 bill since 1928. It's this quiet, constant reminder of the country's founding principles, passed from hand to hand every single day. And this, to me, is the most important takeaway. The hall is not a museum piece. It is a living, breathing stage. I mean, just look at the history that's happened on its steps. The proclamation of Czechoslovakian independence in 1918, some of the very first gay rights protests in the 1960s, and just a little while ago, a major primetime speech by a sitting president. People keep coming back to this exact spot to debate, to protest, and to redefine the very ideas that were born inside. And that really brings us to the final thought. The building stands as a testament to a conversation that started way back in 1776. A conversation about freedom and what it means to govern ourselves. The building is still standing. So the question it leaves us with is, how are we going to continue that conversation today?